Today, we're going to learn about 7 psychology secrets that school never taught you. Now, let's begin. Number 1. The penny experiment. Have you ever tried to remember what a penny looks like? Almost everyone would know right away. It's a brown coin with Abraham Lincoln on it. But what about the rest? Do you know what the words say? Do you know what building is on the back? This seems like something we should know, right? Most of us have seen thousands of pennies before, so why is it so difficult to remember these details? A psychologist might tell you that you can't remember because you never actually knew. This experience is often called mindlessness. It's when you do something without paying attention or storing any new memories. Just think back to the last time you brushed your teeth. How much were you really paying attention? You know it happened, but your memory probably stops there. You couldn't tell me how much time you spent on each tooth or how often you looked in the mirror. The same thing happens to many students when they study. After looking over your notes, you might realize you can't remember anything. The problem isn't your memory. Instead of encoding new information, you were studying mindlessly. You stop focusing on the specific pieces. And when that happens, you don't actually learn anything. To make the most out of everything you do, operate with intention. Try concentrating your mind on each individual thing. It may take a little more time, but you'll remember information when it counts. Number 2. The 3R technique. The average person spends about 12 years in school. Now, if you take out summer vacation, that's 108 months in class, 469 weeks of reading, writing, and doing homework. So how is it that we can dedicate 1,340 days to learning, yet no one ever teaches us how to learn? Students are forced to develop their own strategies to study and retain information. Some use flashcards, others make huge study guides. There are thousands of techniques, but how did they get so diverse? First of all, most students are just trying whatever they think works. They might be studying the wrong way because no one ever told them otherwise. Second, everyone learns a little bit differently. The most commonly used model, often called VARK, breaks students down into 4 learning groups: visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinesthetic. Each one learns best from a different medium. Visual learners, for example, prefer pictures and diagrams, while kinesthetic learners enjoy tactile experiences. This has always been one of the biggest arguments against the modern school system. Classes and lectures favor certain kinds of learners over others. However, schools have made an effort to even the playing field. Many teachers started mixing in spatial and hands-on content to rope in visual and kinesthetic learners who couldn't retain much information from a lecture. But the VARK model raises another important question. If there are so many different kinds of learners, what learning techniques should people be teaching? Is there really an optimal way to learn? Yes and no. Many researchers have discovered incredibly effective ways to revolutionize your study habits. The 3R technique, for example, comes from a 2009 study by a trio of developmental psychologists. They found that a simple change to the way you read significantly improves retention. You start by reading a chapter and taking notes. Then you close your book and put your notes away. Now you recite as much of the content as you can remember out loud. After you finish, look back and review everything that you got wrong. Participants who used this technique scored higher and they spent less time studying. But why does this work? The 3R technique engages multiple parts of your brain. That means it works for several different kinds of learners. Visual and reading learners enjoy the combination of steps 1 and 3. Auditory and kinesthetic learners, on the other hand, get the most from step 2. Even though there are strategies like the 3R technique out there, everyone's ideal way of learning looks a little bit different. For whatever reason, school doesn't teach you to identify the type of learner that you are. But that information will help you way beyond graduation. Your learning habits may point you toward a career. If you've been learning the wrong way, you may uncover interests and passions that you never knew existed. Most importantly, the right techniques motivate you to continue learning. So no matter what kind of learner you are, you should never stop discovering new things. Number 3. Weber's Law. This basic principle of perception is rarely ever mentioned, but you experience it almost every day. Imagine you're in a department store when you see two items on sale. One was originally $5, but it's marked down to $2. The other was originally $40, but it's marked down to $37. So, which is the better deal? Most people instinctively choose the first, even though you're saving $3 either way. You think like this because it's harder to detect small changes in a more intense stimulus. The pricier item is better at hiding the small discount. It seems like you're saving less money simply because you're spending more. Now think about the last time you were standing in a crowded room. If you started whispering, would the room be any louder? No, you'd have to yell to make a difference in the room's overall volume. But if only one other person was in the room, they could easily hear you whisper. In different contexts, the same stimulus can completely change your perception of the world around you. Number 4. Mental rewiring. Learning affects more than just what you know or why you know it. The way you learn actually changes the way you think. You develop different habits and cognitive models. You use particular references because your memories are structured differently than everyone else's. Those unique thought patterns change the way your brain functions. They activate new neurons. They strengthen connections in certain places while leaving others unused. Schools tell you what you need to know, but they forget to consider how that knowledge might change who you are. Number 5. Cognitive upkeep. Have you ever heard the phrase, "It's just like riding a bike"? It means you never really forget how to do something. People often believe once is enough, that their skills will stick around for years, whether they practice or not. But even riding a bike isn't really like riding a bike. There are some parts of your body that will remember how to balance, pedal, and steer. Even if you haven't ridden for 10 years, you won't have to relearn the basics. But you won't be good at it either. You'll feel wobbly and out of control. You'll wonder how you were so good at it as a kid when you can barely do it now. Your physical and cognitive abilities need regular exercise to stay sharp and capable. If you're not regularly using them, they'll fade. To guarantee you stay good at something, consistent practice is the best thing you can do. Whether it's math, dancing, or playing video games, regular rehearsal will keep your talents intact. Number 6. The Barnum Effect. School teaches you how to be logical, but we are full of contradictions. Educated or not, you consistently make unreasonable assumptions and uphold absurd biases. You can argue you're a rational person, but let me ask you this. When your food looks better, doesn't it taste better too? If someone's better looking than you, do they seem more confident? When a magician reads your mind, are you surprised by how accurate they are? These probably sound like 3 very different questions. However, they all point toward the same kind of mistake. When searching for answers, we aren't focused on the truth. We're looking for someone to tell us what we want to hear. We're more willing to believe a lie or perceive something that isn't there simply because we want it to be true. This idea is captured by the Barnum Effect, which is named after the famous showman P.T. Barnum. He didn't actually come up with this theory, but he did make a living off of it. He popularized the idea that people see what they want to see. His shows were filled with obvious lies, yet people were still fascinated by his productions. All he had to do was convince them that he was a reputable source. In the modern world, personality tests are one of the best examples of the Barnum Effect. After answering a few generic questions, these tests claim they can offer some insight into who you are. But what are they really saying? About 99% of the time, the same results could apply to just about everyone. They're general enough to give every person something to latch onto. That isn't to say that all personality tests are bogus, or that every performer is just lying to their audience. But the next time your mind is boggled by a fortune cookie, just take a step back and ask yourself, am I just seeing what I want to see? Number 7. A Small World. Have you ever played the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? This game comes from the idea that everyone is, on average, 6 degrees apart. In this case, a degree is anyone you know, whether it's a family member or someone you went to kindergarten with. There's something most people don't realize about this game. It's actually based on real research. It stems from a study run by an infamous psychologist named Stanley Milgram. In his small world experiment, he connected people in Massachusetts to complete strangers in Nebraska. On average, it took only 5.2 connections, or 6 if you round up. So, what does this mean? Well, for some people, a single school, neighborhood, or city can feel like a massive and diverse place. But maybe the world is a lot smaller than you think. Thank you.